This week on X-Treks, overpopulation, metal transformation, both with pretty suspect explanations.
It's the Alone episode.
Welcome to X-Treks, a podcast where we introduce each other to our fandoms one episode at a time. I'm your host, Erin Cline, an X-Files enthusiastic apologist.
And I'm your other host, Stella Cheeks, a forever slut for Star Trek the original series. Each week we pick 2 episodes that fit a cinematic theme, watch them together, and then record our feelings.
Our theme this week is Alone.
Today we're talking about the episode Mark of Gideon, i.e. the low-key pro-choice episode. Kirk transports to an empty Enterprise only to find that he is currently on a planet so overpopulated that people literally can never be alone. But they also #value life, so they can't use contraceptives or have abortions. But they can infect themselves with a plague so that the majority of the population dies. Isn't it funny how pro-life arguments never make any sense? Something to think about.
And listen, I'm not gonna lie, this was kind of like a season 2 squeeze for me because I just wanted to include more Doggett for Stella because I knew that she liked him. So we're watching season 8, episode 9, Salvage. Don't remember this one? It's the one where a man is accidentally turned into metal, murders a bunch of people, and then sets off to die by being forlornly crushed in a car lot. Are you ready for digging in there, Mr. Spock?
Yes, I am.
All right.
The one thing that is obvious is that I suffered a memory lapse during which time I bruised my arm. It is causing me some irritation.
In time for a quick-ish episode summary. The episode opens on Spock and Kirk walking toward the transporter pad. Through a captain's log, we learn that Kirk is to beam down to the planet Gideon, a notoriously isolationist planet that usually refuses any contact with the Federation. Suspiciously, they out of the blue have invited Captain Kirk and only Kirk down to the planet. But instead of beaming into Gideon's diplomatic chamber, Kirk is beamed onto an empty Enterprise. Meanwhile, Gideon contacts Spock and is like, "Where the fuck is your captain?" To which Spock responds, "What the fuck do you mean?" And then some bad diplomacy happens and Gideon is like, "Sorry about your captain, but that seems like a you problem to us." And Starfleet is like, "I guess we just let our best captain die or whatever so we don't make this one widow planet mad." And the Enterprise crew loses it. Bureaucracy! Back on the other Enterprise, Kirk notices a strange bruise on his arm and that he has lost about 9 minutes of time. But he can't worry about that too much because a beautiful young woman literally spins into his life. Odana is thrilled to be alone, but also seems confused as to why she is there. The two jaunt around the Enterprise for a while and learn basically nothing, getting more and more frustrated by the moment. Kirk and Odana kiss, obviously, because what the hell else you're going to do when you're alone, and then a bunch of creeps watch them do it. Ceaseless watcher, etc., etc. Kirk stops and is like, "Wow, something is loud. It's almost like a bunch of heartbeats." Well, this nonsense has gone on too long for Kirk to be calm anymore, so he convinces Odana to tell him what's going on, sex magic, etc., etc., and he learns that her planet is severely overpopulated. Crowds everywhere, no privacy, and on top of that, the population is basically immortal, so no natural crowd control. He's getting all heated now, but then she passes the fuck out, and the Gideon Knights, sure, let's call them that, including the ambassador that Spock wants to kill, shows up and are like, "Thank you, my boy. Now she'll die and infect thousands with your vegan meningitis." Sure. It's a curable disease that Kirk once had. You see, the ambassador's plan is to infect the Gideon population with a virus, shortening their immense lifespans and relieving the population problem. Kirk is like, that seems like an insane plan. Why don't you just use condoms, get vasectomies, and have abortions? To which they respond, "But life is sacred." Anyways, you're a prisoner now. Let's infect this planet. Meanwhile, Spock realizes that the coordinates that were originally given were fake, and he beams down to Kirk on the other Enterprise. Kirk, Spock, and Odana return to the real Enterprise, where Odana is cured of her disease. But hey, it's okay because she's a carrier now, so the plague plan is still in place. Maybe the Federation should just leave some of these backward-ass planets alone. We don't need them, you know? What do you think of this episode?
Surprisingly, I quite liked it. You guys said that it was boring, and it was. There were definitely parts that were boring.
Someone literally walking around empty hallways.
Right, and I didn't necessarily mind Kirk doing, yes, it was the spinning
around.
woman. As soon as she came in, I was like, well, I hate this woman, and it's never going to get better.
It does make sense if you literally are on a planet so overcrowded that you can barely move, that you would be like, what am I going to do? Spin around.
Yeah, for
I've
real.
never been able to spin around
I want to
before.
take up as much space as
Truly.
I humanly can.
So it's like annoying, but like the more you learn about it, you're like, that does make sense. It is actually a pretty good character choice.
Yeah, that character was annoying. That woman did a great job. When she just like sort of died, she wasn't actually dead, but she like sort of died and her neck went all limp. I was like, that's really good acting.
Yeah. She got meningitis. She's never felt pain before or whatever.
Right?
I don't know. There are a lot of plot holes.
Yeah, it's very strange. If she's never felt pain before, why is being crushed in a crowd that bad?
Because it's the psychological pain. Because when when her dad says, what does pain feel like? She describes the psychological pain of hopelessness.
Yeah, I was surprised how much I liked it. The things I didn't care about and found the most boring were the love story. Because I kind of always find it super boring.
Super shoehorned in there.
I did love that at first he was like, nah, this isn't about sex magic. This is about the Enterprise, my actual girlfriend. Like,
after a while, you're just bored.
Yeah, with the two of them, I just got bored. I was surprised by how much I liked the Bridge and the Gideon Council diplomacy scene. Like, I was like,
the son of a diplomat is like, it's trash? Diplomacy.
Yeah, for real. Everyone in the room's like, I mean, you did a really good job. And he's like, don't talk to me.
It really feels like Spock was working out some feelings towards his dad in that moment and less about what was actually happening. Also very funny knowing Spock's like full trajectory. Like he becomes a diplomat. He becomes like the main diplomat between the Vulcans and the Romulans to various degrees of success. Whatever. So like it's like a very fun full circle for Spock of being like, fuck you, Dad. And then like, but that one line that he has, God, I wrote it down because it's the best, where he says, we must now admit the purpose of diplomacy is to prolong a crisis.
Yes.
Oh, bleak as fuck, Spock.
I like line about his decision being arbitrary too was like, let me just get one last jab in here real quick, motherfucker.
My one qualm about the my one qualm about the Spock ambassador thing is, so they are given the wrong coordinates for Kirk, and then they're given the wrong coordinates again when they're confirming those coordinates, and then when they beam up that guy, they're given the wrong coordinates, which they figure out eventually. But Spock, canonically, even at this point, has an eidetic memory, so he would have been like right away, like, those are different numbers. And it takes him a little while to realize that those are different numbers.
Interesting.
And immediately a Vulcan would be like, so that's different. You're a liar. But also, like, whatever.
He's a child of two worlds. Maybe that was the human part of him. He was watching his boyfriend go, and he was like, man, all right, I guess I'm a little distracted.
It's very nitpicky, but that is a moment where I'm just like, this plot hole bothers me more than any other one. He's good at numbers.
That's very funny. I liked him on the fake Enterprise where he was just like, I'm not bothered at all by this. Just wandering around.
Also a huge plot hole. How would they be able to create a bit by bit perfect recreation of the Enterprise? They're an isolationist planet who never leaves.
I don't know. How did they find out about Kirk's blood having that? Like,
they explain that in the show because they're trying to many times like be like, here are the diplomats we want to come. Here are the diplomats. Here's what's about them. And they send files over on them. I don't know why that file would be like, but actually that makes sense. If you're going to a new planet that's isolationist, you would be like, these are the diseases we've had. Here's the inoculations for it. Just like when you go to a different country, you have to approve your inoculations or your vaccines or whatever. So they send that stuff over, and then these fucking weirdos are like, that could kill us. Let's get that. So they actually say that in the episode.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I liked the dad that we find out at the end, the leader of the council. I really, really liked
Fun fact
him.
about that, he's only 9 years older than that girl.
What?
Hollywood magic.
That's wild.
It's usually the other way around, where it's like a man is the son and the woman is only like 4 years older, and they're like, she's a decrepit old lady now. She must be your mom. Anyways, I just thought that was a fun fact that I learned.
Yeah, that is a fun fact.
Yeah, he does a good job. The scene where they're like bitching about the diplomacy without silencing the view screen, and the guy just keeps going, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
What terrible thing did you just say? Is actually quite funny.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that scene. And particularly, I enjoyed him. And like every time he was on screen, I was like, dude, this guy is killing it. Like he was like, the crew was so good that was like part of my favorite thing. Obviously, I like love the crew when they're all working together, like on a mystery or whatever. But he was like scene steely almost. He was so good. And it was like, nice to see both of those things, the guest actor and also the like crew working together, like we're really top notch in this episode, and that's part of why I like it. And so like I agree there were boring parts, but I was really surprised that I like enjoyed how well acted it was, and also like there's a lot of plot holes, but the plot's interesting at least.
Yeah, I mean the boring parts are sort of like meant to be boring because they're literally wandering around an empty enterprise,
Right.
so like it does work thematically. Yeah, I mean this episode is so wild because like the ethics and the morality of this episode are insane, and
Yes.
like also to like make Kirk like a plague bringer, like that seems like he would be upset by that. Like I killed this
Yeah.
planet, but I mean it's 1969, and I'm not super familiar with the historical timeline of this, but like the whole abortion pro-life thing, it started like pretty late. It started like late 70s, early 80s when it really became like a thing that people talked about. Yeah, an identity, a thing that people talked about a lot. Like previous to that, it was very, there were some people that were really passionate about it, Catholic Church, et cetera, et cetera. Before it became like a Republican a Republican manipulation point.
Yes.
So it is very wild to think that in this 1969 episode, ostensibly about overpopulation, like anything I read about this, it's literally the point of it was about overpopulation. But to have it have this like pretty still spot on send up almost of like the ridiculousness of a pro-life argument. Wild, because Kirk is like, okay, so you guys are functionally immortal and you guys have this overpopulation problem. So what about like sterilization? To which they say like our bodies do grow back. So like that is a good argument.
True.
And he's like, okay, what about like fucking condoms? What about, stop having fucking babies or whatever? And his argument, the ambassador's argument is that, we value life so much. We value the life of the fetus. We value life so much. You value life, and then life is born, and then it's born into hell.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any support. It doesn't have any whatever, which is very true to life. Like a lot of pro-life arguments are like, oh, protect the fetus, heartbeat bill, all of this stuff. But then, a child is born into poverty, or, people can't afford healthcare, or universal healthcare. If you're pro-life, why aren't you pro universal healthcare? If you're pro-life, why aren't you pro universal housing?
Like teenage prevention programs, like they don't want those actually funded.
Yeah, if you're
and that's how you
pro-life,
reduce abortion.
How are you pro death penalty? Right?
Yeah.
Like I know there are some pro-life people aren't, but most people are. They're like pro-life for the babies, but then kill all the criminals or whatever, which is
both wrong,
wild and insane, and doesn't make any sense. And then this too, the argument too is like, oh, we're pro-life, we could never do. We value life so much, but then their solution is, people choosing.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about it.
Euthanize themselves essentially.
But also, she explains earlier that like it is hell, and there are a lot of people that would kill themselves to be alone. And so I think that's part of it, is that they are being offered something that they want, and they are taking it willingly.
They never talk about like, this is taken dark, but they never talk about like suicide. So like they value life, so they don't do suicide, even though living is hell. But like this, it's almost like choosing suicide, but being able to be like, oh, it's just a disease. It's out of my hands.
Exactly. Yes.
It's very
100%.
Like, it's like being killed by a cop. Or like those people who are like, I want to die. And they like run and make a
suicide by cop.
Suicide by cop. It's like, it's not my fault.
That did that. Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's not how this works. It's not how the math works.
You know what else exactly that it's like? It's like rich people who get abortions and say, well, this one was different. When my daughter got an abortion, it was totally fucking different. I used to work with a woman who I was pretty good friends with, who went through a whole scandal and was pregnant, and then had an abortion and like didn't tell anyone. And she told me, and then told me almost immediately after that she was like, but it was because I had these circumstances, and I'm actually quite opposed to abortion. And I was like, did you just tell me with your whole ass mouth that you got an abortion and now you don't support it? Like, what is fucking wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's just such a purposeful disconnect. And that's what this feels like too, where you're right. It's like, this is a disease. It's natural. It killed us naturally. It can get through our blood. Maybe that's part of it too, is that because it's supposed to be like a super ultra rare disease that like kills you very quickly, like they're immortal basically, right? Because they can like heal over everything. And so it does sort of make sense that they're like, we got to get something in our blood that will kill us fucking
24 hours.
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so like there is logic to that part of it, but also it's fucked up.
I don't normally read people's like critiques or like articles or whatever when I'm doing research, because obviously that's, their opinion. But I did find this one article. It's on the creativelifeadventure.com. I don't even know what that is, but it's a person who is like watching all of Star Trek and writing about it. And they really like deep dived into a lot of the pro-life hypocrisy. And I pulled this one quote out of it that I thought was really good, or two quotes. The first one was, the people of Mark of Gideon rely on faith and turn their paradise of a planet into a living hell. Because that was the thing too, like their planet used to be so perfect, like no disease, no germs, like, and then that's how they evolved into, and that's part of his argument too, is like we're trying to introduce that so our planet can like devolve kind of naturally, which is sort of interesting from a scientific like perspective.
And they're not doing it as specifically eugenics either. It's not like we're picking all of these people. These are the bad ones.
That we know of.
Well, but they're talking about it being voluntary, right? And if there's so many people, like that's not necessarily like we're going to carve out these as perfect paradise people. Which is still wild,
though, because diseases evolve. So you're saying it's voluntary at this point, but it could very easily become not voluntary. The other quote that he wrote is, the people of Gideon have always believed that life is sacred and that the love of life is the greatest gift. That is the one unshakable truth. So that's a quote that the ambassador had. And Kirk says, in the great misery which you now face, which is like the thesis of the whole thing. And the article said, this exposes the hypocrisy of the entire life is sacred mantra and the faux pro-life movement, both on Gideon and Earth, which I thought was great. I don't know. It's a really interesting article. Another thing, speaking of the voluntary plague becoming a not voluntary plague, so we talk all the time about like extended universe stuff with books and things. And there's a book called The Worlds of the Federation by Shane Johnson. And so this book, which, you can accept if it's canon or not, but it says that before this disease, the planet population of Gideon was 500 billion, which exceeds the Federation's total population. And then once they introduced the disease, the vegan choriomeningitis, that it wiped out 97% of their population.
What?
Upwards of 485 billion inhabitants, and that now the planet only has like 15 billion people and is like a lonely and empty planet now. And the only reason that they accepted Federation help again is because their planet had so many corpses that they couldn't do anything with them.
Literally thinking that if so many fucking people die, and we were saying too, like they're not shipping people off into space alive, they're not doing that dead either. Like what happens to that's like when people talk about a zombie apocalypse, like what would actually happen to people is that we would all die from like the stench and the disease. Like it would kill us way faster than anything else. I'm like, that's what this planet sounds like. Like, what are you planning to do with these people?
Yeah, it says they accepted a gift of phaser energy disposal units to dispose of the corpses of the dead before additional diseases developed. So their like whole plan to fix the planet decimated the planet.
Holy shit, that's wild.
And they already talked about how like their lives are functionally immortal, or they live a really, really, really long time. Imagine being one of the 15 billion people left.
Oh, fuck.
Psychotic.
Man.
Also, if nobody has room to do anything and they're all just bumping into each other, where and when are you conceiving these children?
That's exactly, I took that exact note. Where is this fucking happening? Literally, where is the fucking happening?
Conception room, and it's like the only place you get any privacy. And so everybody does it because they want to have a moment of privacy, a semi-privacy. I guess you're with another person. Semi-privacy, I guess you're with another person.
Back to back, not touching each other, staring at the other wall, pretending that you're alone.
No, I'm just saying, if you have a conception room and you're like, okay, the only place where you don't have other people is when you're in the designated area in our population to have sex, to have a baby, because we value life. And that is one of the only places where you can have any sort of like semi-alone time. People would have babies. They'd be like, oh, I get fucking 45 minutes to be with only one other person.
Honestly, I just assumed that there was like like Rome. There was like a designated area where people just went and were like shuffling around in circles until they found someone and were like, time to fuck in the middle of all these people.
Yeah, maybe.
'Cause, like, she said like everywhere is crowded. There's people fucking everywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And so like that was my first thought too, was like, where are they making all these babies? And it's like, well, how'd they do that in Rome? In like special fuck places, I guess. You just gotta get there.
Yeah, this episode was co-written by Stanley Adams, who is the actor who played Cyrano Jones in Trouble with Tribbles. He apparently was very concerned with the overpopulation problem. And he was talking about it during the production of Trouble with Tribbles, and Gene Roddenberry was like, okay, turn it into an episode. He also didn't like this episode, probably because of all of the crazy plot holes. But
the curse. Everyone who writes for it is like, God damn it. It's not what I wanted.
And also, like, NBC censors didn't have any problem with the sterilization or the birth control because, again, I think this is, like, kind of pre it becoming this, like, cultural, like, you know, it was there, but, like, you know, whatever. Obviously, Gideon is a biblical reference.
Sure.
It is.
I'm Catholic. I don't care.
Yeah, and then two fun things about like Star Trek like reusing stuff. In an episode of Star Trek Discovery, there is a book in one of Captain Georgiou's in her ready room that says the Mark of Gideon, which is interesting. And then in Star Trek Prodigy, the episode Kobayashi, and Prodigy is very good. They reuse a sound clip of Uhura saying, "Yes, he's infuriating, sir. How can you stand it?" Which I think is fun, just to kind of the like. There's so much content that you can kind of bounce back and forth. Yeah.
I like that as Star Trek goes on, it becomes very interconnected.
Yeah, that's like, you know, it's mostly the good part about it until some random showrunner comes on and they're like, what if the Klingons look really different? And you're like, what if they don't, though? What if they have prosthetics where they can talk? That seems like a good thing.
Nope, it's fine.
So that's it. That's the fucking pro-life, or the pro-choice episode.
Yeah.
It's a wild episode.
Yeah. I like that their plan was to just keep Kirk there. Like, why?
Just to have him because if somebody dies, then that blood is gone.
Yeah, but you can take blood that you can infect multiple people with. Like, you don't have to drain all of his blood and put it into another person. Like,
I don't think that
give
they
him,
were like
8
super
vials.
scientifically advanced. They're not giving that vibe off.
They were super good at replicates, replication, play, house building, I guess is the way to describe it, and nothing else.
Yeah.
They just looked at old footage and just, like, pieced it together. Because they're immortal. They could do that as long as they want. They're just like, whatever, I can sit here. Not actually immortal, most functionally immortal. I liked it that they had the window with the people shuffling in the back. Endlessly shuffling. Because at first I was like, this is annoying. And then after, like, several minutes, I was like, this is a good choice, actually. Seeing them all just, like...
And they're, like, weird outfits.
With the hood.
Yeah.
Why did the council not wear those outfits?
Well, the council, like, you know, or the, like, higher-ups of society, they had room to move around, and they didn't, you know.
He was king, I guess.
Something.
I did like that we got to see Scotty in the captain chair. I always love when that happens. So that was fun. It was nice to see. Spock was very Spock. Scotty was very Scotty. Uhura was very Uhura. Like, I really like that. I was glad I knew it was season 3 because it feels very like season 3 that their like vibe is really working too.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't have any other thoughts.
Those are all my thoughts on this weird episode. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's interesting to talk about and like take apart.
I would watch it again.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not like clambering to watch the Mark of Gideon. But yeah.
I mean, it sounded like my first choice if I was just like, all right, just choose a random one and that was the pick. Okay, I would watch that. That's fine.
That's fine. Synopsis showdown?
Yes.
Pro-life. A hell of your own making.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's super chill to steal someone's blood to allow your planet to miss suicide, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, Kirk, who has been established as being a plague survivor and a genocide survivor, probably should have had a bigger reaction to, you're using my blood for what?
Yeah.
But alas, here we are What is narrative consistency in the 60s? Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Are you ready for Dog It? It's me.
Aw. Yes, I am, Louie.
You know I hate to ruin your beautiful theory with ugly facts, but stop to examine the incident.
All right, here is an episode summary. Here we go. All right, there's a lady in Indiana who is very suspicious of her husband's death, saying he died from Gulf War syndrome, a very popular thing that was on television writing at the time. The guy is like, I don't know, maybe I can comfort you? No? All right, I'm gonna head out, I guess. And as he's driving away, he crashes hard as fuck into what looks like a person, but acts kind of like a straight up concrete pillar, absolutely destroying the car. Amazingly, the guy survives, sort of, only to reveal the name Ray, then gets murdered as fuck by being pulled by the face from the car. We find this out in the next paragraph of this summary. At the scene of the crash, Scully and Doggett are doing detective work, and this is season 8, and both partners are reliably doing tangible work. A lot less staring into the middle distance without Mulder. The woman from the kicker who had doubts about her husband's death comes running up because she at this moment is hearing about this, and also like how fucking fast did Scully and Doggett get there? It's like immediate. And asks where the guy, Curtis, is, and lo and behold, he's super close to them and stuffed into a trash can. Bad news, his face is fucked up, and there are 5 more holes in his face than there should be now. Scully does her signature autopsy and determines that the 5 fingers reached into Curtis's head and pulled him from the vehicle. Doggett's detective work is that he finds a fresh fingerprint and Ray's blood. When he goes to warn Nora that it appears her husband is alive, she's like, no, the fuck he's not. I watched him die. Anyway, Ray shows up, and man, oh man, Odell is like shredding a hella documents, not a great sign. Harry plays nice while surreptitiously pulling a shotgun out and shooting the fuck out of Ray, like really bad. And he says, this time you stay dead. Except just kidding, because Ray is out there rebuilding like some kind of like final boss in a future hellscape game, and Harry is so transfixed by this that Ray kills him dead. Guess what? The shredded documents weren't that shredded, and Doggett manages to find the name of a company and the employee number, like truly abysmal shred job, doing some more detective work. Doggett goes out to the company and learns that they're working on quote-unquote smart metal that can regrow. Sounds familiar? But it's certainly not a thing we can do now. That employee isn't even here anymore anyway. Goodbye. Scully obviously discovers that Ray did not have Gulf War syndrome at all. He was having his entire cell structure changed due to exposure to some quote-unquote unknown substance. Doggett finds a suspicious barrel in the salvage yard where Ray worked, and wouldn't you believe it, is the same employee inside of this barrel in metal now and in like a horrifying position, to be honest. It's the same employee who no longer worked at the metal facility. They discovered he was poisoned by his own work and he requested that he be put in a barrel in order to keep his contagion from everyone else. Gross. Unfortunately, the barrel did not go to the waste dump that was rated for radioactive containment and instead went to this shithole salvage yard. Doggett finally gives it to Nora straight and is like, yo, this is the score. It was just kind of like a big accident and there's not actually anybody to blame. Bad news, though. Ray still thinks that there is somebody to blame and accidentally murders a lady by trying to muffle her to death, I guess. He interrogates his ex-wife about who is responsible. Nora tells him Harris. So Ray is off to find and destroy that man. Nora, realizing she just set this dude up to get murdered, lets the police know what is happening. When Ray goes to kill Harris, he finds him with his family and learns that he really is just a dude who fucked up and sent the body to the wrong place. Sorry, actually, like really sorry. Ray decides to let him go and, dealing with the crushing weight of his terrible position, goes off to die alone, crushed to death in a metal compactor. The end. What did you think about this episode?
It was fine.
Yeah.
It's not like there's nothing remarkable about it, but it's not bad. It's just an episode that we watched.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way about it that I did about yours, where it was like, I quite enjoyed this in many ways, but it also like, I don't know that I would have picked this out. Again, when I was doing my notes, I was like, why did I pick this episode?
And he feels very alone.
It's true.
I don't understand the level of the contagion. So like the barrel gets taken to the shipyard and this dude like touches it or whatever and starts to die and turn into this metal thing. Doggett deadass kicked it over and all of the contagion went everywhere.
I know. I thought the same thing. Also, what a Mulder ass move to be like, what's this? And kick
Like,
it over.
That liquid metal like seeped out, and then the guy was there, and then they also transported that guy as like a gotcha to the CEO or whatever.
Yeah.
But like presumably they touched it because they're bad at contagion containment. So like I don't really understand how more people aren't being turned into horrible metal like monsters.
I don't know. I don't understand it either. Maybe it's you have to have like direct contact with it for a certain amount of time. If he was working in the salvage yard and had to like move it around a bunch, like I can understand how he would have more exposure to it. Like if he's the person who's actually moving the shit around in the yard, it would make a little more sense. This is me just kind of like filling it in my own canon brain, but like that kind of makes sense to me. And that it's only one person also kind of feels like I can make that mental jump that he's exposed to this more than anyone else is.
I don't know.
I
cannot. He kicks over the barrel and a ton of shit comes out.
I mean, I know.
That it like seeped into the ground. That seems bad.
The whole place is like what else is melting into the ground there? Battery acid, all kinds of bullshit. Like, I don't know that it makes that much difference.
Yes, but battery acid isn't
contagion for blood to turn you into metal.
Yes, self-repairing. That's the whole thing, is that it's self-repairing metal or whatever, and it has memory and rebuilds. And
I don't know, it's weird because I guess it's supposed to be implied that he's like crystallized as metal.
I don't know,
because he's the only other person who's exposed to this, right? And so we don't really have any kind of answers about what happens to you exactly. But also, like, here's my big plot hole point with this one that really bothers me. If Ray can get hit by a fucking car, why can't the scientist push his way out of the barrel? Why are there handprints on the top of the barrel that
maybe he's not trying that hard because he knew he was trying to accept death, so maybe he just did it instinctually and then
okay, all right, I can make that jump. That's acceptable. It bothers me every time because it's like he could definitely get out of there.
This come out before or after Terminator 2 or whichever one that guy was in?
Yes.
Okay.
It came out afterwards.
It was written before Robert Patrick was cast as the T-2000.
It feels very like, haha, we have the Terminator guy.
Coincidence.
Yeah, it was a total coincidence. They do put the nod to it in where he says this only happens in the movies, and Stella.
Scully.
and Scully's like, oh, do they? Like,
does it?
Yeah, so I also enjoyed that. I thought that was really interesting, and like part of what Fox wanted was when they cast Doggett, they were anticipating they'd get a 10% boost in male viewership from like 18 to 34.
Because of Terminator?
Yes, literally because of him. And like I read that and I was like, that's just delusional, girl. Absolutely not.
Well,
like
execs don't understand who watches television.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
I think they do a little bit more now, but like not really.
Yeah,
like your masculine shows, those are being watched by ladies who are like, what if they kiss? That's just true.
I know. I'm not laughing because it's not true. I'm laughing because you're absolutely right.
That's just literally the history of all television. That's just the facts that I have.
That's why this partnership could never survive. People were like, Doggett and Scully, I don't know, low ranking in the ships.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad because I like don't have a lot to say about this episode.
Yeah.
Like,
there's not a lot to say about this episode. I have very little
the
apocrypha
acting
for
was
this.
good. Like, he did a good job. Yeah, what would you do if you were dying? Also, if he was dying because of that and his wife was nursing him when he was sick, you would think that there would be contamination there too. I just feel like the plague rules don't work. Oh, they're both kind of like weird like contamination stories.
Yeah, that's what I took a note on, is that they're like specifically blood ones too.
Yeah, blood-based plagues or whatever.
This could have been, instead of alone, blood-based plagues, which is bizarre.
It's too hard to say.
Yeah,
you're
right.
Say it.
That's true. You're right.
That was kind of a mess.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I like, again, if I was doing a watch and this came up, sure. I'm glad that they explained later that the metal is specifically in and works in the blood, because at first I was like, why does this dude even have blood right now? I was like, this is
maybe that's what it is.
Picard bullshit.
Maybe it's like hepatitis, where you get nicked by something and it gets into your blood specifically. And if you're not doing blood-to-blood contact, you don't necessarily spread it.
That would make sense.
And if he's, again, carrying the barrel, that would make sense,
it feels like if you
too.
work in a salvage yard, you would be, like, really careful about that. You'd be, like, gloves on gloves on gloves.
I mean, that's true, but I don't know. How often do you handle a barrel full of a dead metal man? Like, and he was also, like, there is that, like, consistency throughout that he's, like, pulling this very painful metal out of his, like, body, too.
Yeah, no, I just meant to contract the disease.
No, like, that's what I mean, is that he's showing us that there's this, like, very difficult metal to remove, and he's carrying a barrel full of a man made of that metal. Like, I can see how you could, like, again, make that jump to that's how he was exposed. Again, like a hepatitis thing.
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to know that almost all of the critics said it was boring?
No.
Yeah, it's
just also, like, with such a big swing as, like, a metal man, I feel like you want it to be more exciting. And I guess technically it falls into, like, Monster of the Week, but it's not. Yeah. It doesn't feel that way. It's just like, we have this metal man idea and we have 23 episodes to fill or whatever. Mm-hmm. This feels like a filler episode. Like, there's some interesting character stuff between Scully and Daga. I know the whole thing with their seasons is, like, she's the Mulder now being like, oh, and he's like, I rely on facts, blah, blah, blah. But, like, they didn't even spend that much time together in this episode. Yeah. And honestly, there's not a ton of Scully and Daga in this. It's a lot of just this metal dude walking around.
That is the exact other thing that people say about this episode, is that it, like, really features the guest characters very heavily, and that the scenes between Scully and Doggett are, like, boring or whatever, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I like seeing Doggett in that role, because I like that they write him specifically very different from the way that they wrote Scully before. Like, he's very inquisitional, but, like, also does really want, I mean, spoiler alert, I think we told you this before, his kid was murdered, and so he's also very hardline about, like, I need to know things permanently and forever mean this thing. And so, like, I like him as a foil to Scully's, like, I'm a skeptic, also really religious. Like, I like that that's not the same thing, that same vibe. So I think this was a good episode that, like, kind of showcases that too. And also, that shot of Scully standing inside of the car is fucking awesome. Like, that is one of the best parts of the episode. And obviously
that
what they invested the most in.
At the beginning, and then the cold open then afterwards it's done really well.
And that's, like, what the emphasis was in this episode, was on that exact stuff. And truly they nailed it for that, which is pretty cool. And also, it's season 8, like, they have money. Why not do it? So, yeah.
Is the idea that the more he got hurt, the more he got turned into metal because the blood was, like, having memory, or was the idea that it was just slowly taking over anyways?
I think it was just taking over anyways.
Okay. Wild to just be like, I guess I'll just get squashed to death. It seems pretty painful.
Yeah.
Also, nobody works at that salvage yard anymore. Who is running that machine?
Oh, someone got that job immediately.
But no, the owner died. The owner got murdered. So there would have to be somebody to sell it and stuff. Like, I
don't know. Maybe somebody immediately. I don't know. Maybe it's a family business. I don't know. It's a salvage yard. It probably is a family business. Any other thoughts?
No, man. I'm sorry. I wish I could be, like, clever and fun and funny, but this is, like...
No, it's not.
Just, like, nothing really happens at all.
Yeah.
Like, tons of stuff happens, but, like, not really. And it's repetitive, right? He kills one guy. He kills another guy.
Yes.
He turns into metal more. Then he's dead.
Yes, exactly. I like the last shot of him getting crushed.
Yeah. There are some good, like, visual shots in it.
Again, like the car shot with Scully and the crash, like, both of those are very good. I actually really like the way that they do his blown off arm too. Like, it doesn't look hokey, which is really nice.
This episode looks like it was probably actually pretty expensive to shoot, and it's too bad that it's pretty mid for such an expensive episode.
Welcome to season 8. There's some real gems in there, but man, did they have a lot of money to throw at a lot of stuff sometimes.
Hey.
Just kind of nice. All right, synopsis showdown?
Sure.
I have to loudly flip my papers. An accountant accidentally gave a man the worst case of metal poisoning of all time.
Metal men have no hearts. Or do they? Because he saved that guy at the end. Because that kid was like, I don't know.
Why didn't the family notice his fucked up face? Not a single person. The dude that almost died wasn't like, hey, maybe you should know that his face is all fucked up now. Like, nobody mentioned that.
What dude that almost died?
The man from the car who was almost murdered in front of his family.
Yeah, but by that time, that guy just disappeared. And I think by that time, they have concluded that Ray didn't kill Owen, so maybe he's stopping the killing, and then he never shows up again. So even if Owen was like, yeah, he has a metal face, they never see him again. So it's irrelevant.
I guess that's fair. All right. Yeah. They just assume, like, well, he's off to die, so... Yeah. I mean, I guess that's true, right?
Because even if they have, like, a, whatever out for him, like, they never see him again. He's dead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, they actually do know that he is going to die because they know what happened to the guy in the barrel. So, like, they know that he is... It doesn't really matter if they don't see him after 48 hours or whatever. Like, it's not their problem anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. The end.
The end. Hooray!
Are you ready for Deep Throat's mission logs?
Always.
Your Excellency, please do not interfere. I already have one serious problem to resolve with upper echelons.
Okay, starting with Mark of Gideon. Air date January 17th, 1969. Written by George F. Slavin and Stanley Adams. George F. Slavin was the one who developed this with Stanley Adams. Stanley Adams talked a lot about how this was an idea that was really important to him and his son. His son, like, really wanted... I don't know if it was just, like, a thing that he said or...
How old was the son?
I don't know.
Oh, man, I feel like that really changes this.
I mean, overpopulation is a problem, but it's funny that so many people were, like, really hyperfixated on it.
Right.
Yeah.
On Stanley Adams being upset with the rewrites in the show, which we can talk about as well. He's quoted as saying, when you write for TV, there is an old expression, take the money and run, which means once you turn it in, it's not yours anymore. The final edits of this script were done by Arthur Singer and Fred Freiberger, who are people who know Star Trek really well and tried to just hammer it more into Trek. I have a link in my online notes here that is Slavin and Adams' original treatment for this script, at least their notes from it. Perusing it a little bit as I did, Hodin, the leader of the planet, the main, was actually a lot more devious and militaristic. There was a lot of testing and blood transfusions, and it turns out that while the planet was overpopulated, he and his lead council were the only ones who were functionally immortal, so they were killing the rest of the planet and not
So it was
themselves.
more eugenics-y.
It was more eugenics-y, yeah. Original title for that story script, No Place to Die, which I think is cool.
No Place to Die.
A little more on George Slavin, decorated World War II serviceman. Late 40s to mid 50s, was a mid-level movie writer, transferred over to TV. In his IMDb, it's noted as 17 feature films and over 300 TV episodes and pilots to his credit. So he wrote a lot. Wrote the original Hitchcock Presents episode, The Indestructible Mr. Weems, great episode. Wrote for like 1 to 2 episodes for every TV show through the 50s and 60s, except for Maverick and Cheyenne and Combat, which he did 4 more of, and also The Flying Nun.
Yeah. Sally Fields.
This is directed by Judd Taylor, who also did Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, Cloudminders, and others. Moving on to casting from there, that's Richard Durr as Admiral Fitzgerald, who I call Edmund.
Why?
Edmund Fitzgerald. It's an old song. The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald is an old song. It's fine. That's a joke that's just for me.
Whatever, dude.
Best known for playing David Randall in When Worlds Collide, as well as longer guest stays on the show Barnaby Jones. Lore note, nothing really in extended canon about Admiral Fitzgerald, except that he was the one who promoted Matthew Decker, the guy who goes apeshit during the Doomsday Machine, to captain. Also, as I'm sitting here now, I am trying to think of an extended Federation official we meet in TOS that isn't an absolute douchebag.
I think we
Good
talked
luck.
about this before, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Good luck.
That's Gene Dynarski as Krodak, the Hodin's left-hand man. We've actually seen him extensively before. He plays the miner Ben in Mudd's Women. He plays the lead miner trying to get one of Mudd's illusory women.
Man, I fucking knew I recognized him, and I'm certain that that's which episode it's from.
Yeah.
Like, almost certainly.
You now recognize people from other episodes of Star Trek.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Oh my god, I mean, we're like almost done, so that makes sense.
That's Sharon Acker as Adona. Most known prominently as Lynn in the 67 Point Blank and 62 episodes of Texas as Judith Wheeler. Also Anne in the pilot of Galactica 1980. Galactica 1980 got 10 episodes. It's about when the Battlestar Galactica finally reaches Earth and what happens then. It only got 10 episodes, though, so, like, it wasn't great, but, you know.
It wasn't great.
Yeah. And that brings us to David Hurst as Hoden. He was Rudolph Riesenweber in the 69 Streisand-fronted Hello, Dolly. Also Strasser in The Boys to Brazil, guest roles all over TV. Austrian-born, acted around Europe, and then jumped to California in his 20s, had a solid career both in TV and on and off Broadway, was a visiting acting professor at both Yale and Carnegie Mellon. So, like, he's good. He's good in this episode. He's actually good.
Yeah, he felt very theater. He felt very
They
commanding.
all feel so theater.
Yes.
It's great casting. One of his final roles was that of Sal Goldstein in the TV movie Skokie, which was a dramatization of the real-life lawsuit the Nazi Party filed against Skokie, Illinois, after they were refused a march there. The tagline for the film was, "Just how far can we go with freedom of speech?" This was 1981.
Maybe we should
Christ.
make everybody watch that again.
Oh my god.
Throwing that out there in case anybody wants to revisit some ideas that we had in the 80s about Nazis.
You know, that they're bad. Full stop.
For real.
Moving on to the X-Files and Salvage.
Not a lot. Not a lot.
Well, so here's another weird coincidence with these episodes. Original air date, January 14th, 2001. So January 17th and January 14th. I don't know if these were just some beginning of the year ass episodes. Written by Jeffrey Bell, who also wrote Season 6's The Rain King and Alpha, Season 7's The Goldberg Variation and Sides and Wizards. The Rain King and Goldberg Variation, I believe we've covered in the show, and they're good episodes.
Yeah, Goldberg Variation, I know we did at some point because it's the one with Shia LaBeouf where we just pretended he wasn't in the episode.
Yeah.
Much of this action was based in Muncie, Indiana. Bell picked this location because it was hometown of his grandparents and much of his grandparents' friends and all of that. It is noted that one of the major inspirations for this episode is a movie named Tetsuo the Iron Man. This is an old anime, and I believe this is kind of where some of the weirdness and shit doesn't work transfers from, because Tetsuo the Iron Man is all about a guy who gets killed in a car accident and comes back as this, like, mechanical flesh ghost to get revenge on the people who killed him.
Flesh ghost.
It's a very spiritual, spooky story, and not at all a sciencey one at all. So I think he tried to pull that into the world of the X-Files, and it doesn't work because science is real in the X-Files, the government's real in the X-Files. So that's why all of this stuff kind of happens. It's also why we've seen the government fill in a full-ass cave with cement because 3 kids ran fast. At no point in this does the government put a fucking lid on this.
Yeah.
This goes nowhere. This is Jeffrey Bell's last episode of The X-Files. He would then go on to join the writing team for Angel.
Oh.
This was directed by Rod Hardy. Also Season 8, Roadrunners, and Vienna, the oil tanker Dog It On Mulder action episode that we watched. More on that truly amazing car crash in the beginning of...
It's so good.
For such a mid-episode,
Right?
that shot is in, like, every montage of the X-Files episodes ever. Like I said, that was 2001. All of this was done mostly with green screen effects with only a little bit of computer overlay. For the actor's side, it was him and then some intense fans and like a splash of like shards of glass around them. And then on the car crash side, it is a pole that's green screened that they run the car into. And it looks so good. And
It
it's
looks great.
so well done. They've done notable car crashes and flips like that in the past where like they've had to crash a lot of cars in order to get it right. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
It is kind of a shame that it's such a good opener and then it's such a mid-episode in so many other ways.
We hear a musical motif throughout the episode that is a clip of Edvard Grieg's piano concerto, composed in 1868. At the time of this episode, even though talked a lot about in TV shows and things like that, the Gulf War Syndrome had not become widely accepted as a real thing and was just a social thing that people kind of talked about. In fact, I think it took recognition of the syndrome would later would change later due to sheer numbers of veterans like going through it. It was a study released in April of 2010 by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and the U.S. National Academy of Science that showed that some 250,000 of the near 700,000 of U.S. servicemen and women that went to the Gulf War in 1991 suffer from this chronic multi-symptom illness. Like, it was real, and nobody was actually doing anything about it.
It's weird that these are both also episodes about, like, abortion and pro-choice and, like, Gulf War syndrome before either of them were really, like, a cultural cudgel in many ways. I would not have guessed that would have also tied these episodes together.
Moving on to some casting stuff, we see screaming in a backseat Reese Morgan as Owen Harris, the small Harris child. Only 5 guest TV roles from 2000 to 2003, including Malcolm in the Middle and a commercial, and then done. Great for a child actor. Get out of it.
For real.
That was Colleen Quinn as Miss Harris, screaming in the front seat. This is her last credited role. She did some Law and Order, Becker, ER, other guest appearances. That's Kenneth Meserole as Owen Harris. He was one of the main voice actors in a 1979 anime that came out right before, but was like released during Star Wars. It became popular during Star Wars. And he's only credited for this role now because at the time, none of those people who were doing English dubs for anime cartoons from anywhere were credited. And it took fans doing extensive research to track down the full voice cast of it to actually get those credits on there. He's doing guest acting work now still. We see Randy Walker as a SWAT officer. He is an actual cop. He was an LAPD cop who in 1988 founded Call the Cops, a police technical advising business that helps filmmakers achieve a degree of realism and authenticity for their products. So he has a lot of credits as consultant or script developer or things like that, but he's also just a cop. We see Scott McDonald as Curtis Delario. He's Jack Frost in the hilarious B movie of the same name, Jack Frost. He also does Jack Frost in the sequel as well. He's also Burley on Carnival. They brought him back because he originally did an episode of Space Above and Beyond, so he was in their casting pool. Plays a lot of mean guys with mustaches, and also does a lot of video game work. Matrix, X-Men Legends 2, Mafia, so much more. He's also done a lot of Star Trek. He did...
Which one is this?
He was the friend in the beginning.
I feel like all of his stuff in the beginning, it was like really dark filmed.
Yeah.
So I don't like have a good idea of what his face looks like.
Star Trek, he's played a bunch of aliens and
Right.
had a bunch of makeup too. So TNG, face of season 6, he's in Face of the Enemy, Subcommander Novak. Voyager, he's in the first episode of Voyager as Rollins. DS9, he's in 2 episodes. Captive Pursuit as Tosk, and Hippocratic Oath as Goran Agar, and Enterprise 8 episodes as Commander Dolan.
Okay.
Yeah, that is Tamara Clatterbuck as Lorena Jackson, the person working in the Halfway Home. Hell of a name, yes.
It's a hell of a name.
I get that she was just doing her job, but if you think this guy's violent, why do you keep being alone with him?
She desperately wants to fix him, is how I always read that.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, people saw you covered in blood. Me coming into your room alone.
Unexpectedly, also.
She has a really convincing speech of just like, hey, I come from some fucked up shit too, and I really want to help you.
Yeah. Well, she's dead now.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
Not in real life. That's not what Stella was saying.
character.
It was in the
No,
character.
yeah,
It was a
no,
character
the
in the show.
character.
It was a character in the show. She does 85 episodes of Days of Our Lives from 01 to 02 and 113 episodes of Young and the Restless, with her character spanning from 1998 to 2017. She, like, in different makeup and lighting, she looks soap opera perfect.
Wait, so when did you say she started? 1998? So she had already been a soap opera known, sort of, for 3 years, and then was in this role. That's kind of funny. I feel like she has that vibe in this, and it's like a good crossover into that. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. She does guest roles all over TV as well. Also in the amazing Weird Al movie UHF, she plays the dominatrix in his Jerry Springer show.
Funny.
Very funny note from my childhood. Went to college for business admin and minored in classic ballet. And then as Dr. Pogovel with no H because it's German.
Guy.
That's Ari Gross.
Yeah.
That's that guy. I don't know what you know him from, but it's from something. Was it Minority Report? Castle for the boys?
Oh, mine is Castle. He's one of the coroners.
Like any
He's
TV?
the mean one because
Yes.
there's one coroner who's like fun and they're friend, and then he shows up and he hates everyone and everything, and he's like, this person's dead, deal with it, bye.
Like any TV show from 82 onward, he's done a lot. I can't actually recall what I know him from. He's done work in radio plays and audiobooks for Star Wars and recently a podcast called The Prophecy as well. He was in a Millennium episode before this, Skull and Bones. Yeah, he's just that guy. It was really funny because I wrote that blurb myself, and then his IMDb biography starts with something like the line of, he's a character actor who everybody knows, but nobody can really tell what they know him from. So, yeah, we nailed it. That is Jennifer Parsons as Nora Pierce. Was most recently Lydia Milestone in How to Get Away with Murder. A few acting roles, including Murder, She Wrote, Twilight Zone, West Wing, Jag. Also a couple of other Star Trek as well. DS9 Season 5, Episode 22, Children of Time. She plays Miranda O'Brien, who doesn't exist anymore. She's the descendant of Miles O'Brien and another crewmate in an alternate reality where the Defiant crashes into a planet and they repopulate the planet. I think then like
Miles.
Odo or someone like diverts the accident and changes the timeline, so none of those people exist anymore.
Yikes.
She also is in Voyager, Season 1, Episode 1, Caretaker, and plays an Ocampa nurse. Closest she gets to Supernatural is an episode of The OC. Is that close? I feel like
Oh
that's
my God,
close.
I used to watch that with my sister.
It's
She was
not
super
close.
into it.
Okay.
Whatever, the OC
Well, I
is
tried.
awesome.
Well, I
I've
tried.
never seen a single episode of the OC.
And then that
I would watch it now. I bet it's a disaster.
And that is Wade Andrew Wilson as Raymond Aloysius Pierce.
Unnecessary.
Fucking unnecessary is that middle name. Known for roles in Ken Park, he was a Blackgate warden in Dark Knight Rises, a different prison guard in Venom, Buford Tuttle in Three from Hell, Brad Bellick in 62 episodes of Prison Break, Ted Daniel in Aaron Brockovich, which I can never spell, and most recently Fad in the bad live-action Cowboy Bebop Netflix show. Anyways, he also does a few DC comic voice acting roles as well. Harvey Dent in Dark Knight Returns, Killer Croc in 3 episodes of Beware of the Batman, Deegan in Green Lantern, Emerald Knights, Mantis in Batman Brave of the Bold, and voiced Black Mask in Batman Under the Red Hood. He's still doing a lot of stuff now. He also has done a bit of Trek, which is cool to just see throughout all of this. Season 1, Episode 9 of Enterprise, he plays Garrus, who was a Malorian who posed as an Akali in order to conduct covert mining operations on their homeworld.
Enterprise.
Does not remember. It sounds like an Enterprise thing. And then he's also in a Voyager episode, Season 4, Episode 25. He plays Therese Lo Taris, someone that 7 of 9 is imagining after being affected by radioactive waves.
Normal Star Trek stuff.
And then the closest he gets to an episode of Supernatural is an episode of Charmed. I actually think that's close.
What episode of Charmed?
I don't know. I'd have to look at it. Okay.
He seems super familiar, and you say all these things that I've seen him from. What is his name?
Wade Andrew Williams. You'll probably see him. It's like Wade Williams.
I think I spelled Wade wrong.
I actually think I recognize him from
did.
Prison Break.
I never watched that show.
I did not ever watch that show either, but the commercials for it and it sometimes would come on before shows that I watched. And so I just remember, it's like when you watch Raw, you get like the end 5 minutes of The Accountant, for example, 150,000 times in a fucking row. It was sort of like that with Prison Break.
Oh, fuck. That's our professional wrestling every week PTSD is.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's something,
I've
right?
watched so much with him in it, so his face is probably just like in my brain. But usually when I look, I'm like, oh, this guy, I know him from this thing. But like, I've seen so much of what he's been in, but I can't think of like where my brain is pinging him from. So, I mean, I did just rewatch Elementary, and he's in one episode of Elementary, so maybe that.
Perhaps.
I don't know.
But it's definitely something.
Closest
Like
in
him and Ari
time.
Gross are the really recognizable people, but they've just done so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's it.
That's it.
Wear condoms. God damn it.
Wear condoms. It's okay. No one's going to get mad at you. Oh, okay. I bet it is Elementary because this episode is really intense. And we did just rewatch it, and this is one of the later seasons.
You had kind of a sense that you'd seen him play like a big serial killer guy.
Yeah, you immediately pinged him as a serial killer.
Yeah, he's like a female trafficker in this one. It's like a really fucked up episode. He's good in it, but like we just rewatched this and he's like a big bad. So I'm gonna guess it's Elementary.
Yeah,
but I've seen a million things he's in. Anyways, let's wrap up the show.
Okay.
Come on, a machine doesn't know blame, Agent Scully.
Nor mercy.
Overall thoughts. How do these episodes tie together?
I mean,
blood-borne diseases.
Yeah, blood-borne diseases. That was kind of the real tie together here.
I mean, there's a planet where people want to be alone, and then there's Kirk's alone with O'Donna, and then this one he feels alone because everybody turned on him and he's isolated because he's turning into metal or whatever. Also, you can make an argument that his wife feels alone now because she doesn't have a husband, or that dude's
has been
friend.
abandoned by her alive husband and her dead husband. Weird yes, no,
Could make an argument about that. They tie together sort of.
Yeah, they weirdly tie together more than I anticipated when I picked this episode, to be truthful.
All right, Superfan questionnaire. Would this episode be on your must-watch list?
Absolutely not.
No.
Again, though, I did enjoy it. I was surprised, because a lot of times what happens, too, with the, kind of boring ones is that I'll be enjoying it, and then something will happen where I'll be like, well, never mind, I don't really like this episode anymore.
I think the Star Trek episode at least loans itself to interesting conversations.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Whereas the X-Files episode is, again, just sort of an episode.
Yeah, it's an episode where you talk about the scenery more than you talk about the actual plot of the episode in any kind of real way, for sure. Would this...
No, I answered the question. I answered the question while you were answering your question. You don't have to ask it if I answered it.
Listen. I want to make sure we're really clear.
Is there a series-defining moment in this episode?
I feel like the bridge crew, that was so well enforced about what each character was so very much themselves, which are so obviously well established at this point too. So I thought that was very true to that. I also thought very true to the series was Kirk being the Enterprise and my crew are my absolute first priority. That is 100% true, but from what I understand from the absolute first introduction of him to the absolute last, whatever the fuck that is, outro of Kirk, I wrote it down in my notes that I think that maybe my actual OTP for this series is Kirk and the Enterprise. Weirdly, I sort of mean it as a joke, but I also kind of actually mean it because, I don't know.
For real.
Again, I feel I like the OTP of McSpurk together, obviously, but I'm not. The fanfic isn't my real thing. I'm not really interested in the sexual part of it. I'm so much more interested in the way that he's obsessed with this ship. I just think it's very interesting, and so this is the kind of episode I really like, where he's I am dialed into that, and that feels so true to the rest of the series too.
I also must reiterate that fanfic is not solely about sex.
I know that. I know it's about the emotional connection.
You don't read the long ones where they barely have sex and it's all about the emotional connection.
Yeah, because I don't want to be bored.
I know, but you can't just write off fanfics as just sex. It's just not.
I know. You can make a joke about things. I can make a joke about things too. Sheesh.
I would say the series defining moment is Scully's autopsy ruining all of their theories.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I guess this affirms your OTP of Kirk and the Enterprise.
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, I will stick with I don't know, maybe I do want to officially change it. We're almost done with this. Yes, I think it does affirm my ship of Kirk and the Enterprise. My preferred ship of the Kirk and the Enterprise.
It's the ship.
Exactly.
There is no OTP in this episode to confirm.
No.
So, no.
Absolutely not. All right, that makes sense. Is this a fuck, fine, or a flop?
A fine.
Yeah, definitely a fine. Two real fines here.
Just fine.
Not fine, but
yeah,
fine.
They're fine. They're not flops. They're just fine. They're the true definition of fine.
I feel like they're both. I feel like they're both episodes where you kind of take a pause. And you're I mean, yeah. No, they're fine. They're fine. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's not just an immediate oh, whatever, it was fine. It's it's a considered fine.
Yeah. They're not unwatchable, but they're not like fun.
Yeah, I'm not picking these out to watch by themselves necessarily.
All right, that's it. That's the end.
All right, you can find us on the internet. Follow us at NYD Productions on Instagram and interact with the show using the hashtag XTrexPods. You can find me at NYD Urgency on Instagram.
You can find me on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and Instagram at Stella Cheeks.
You can find me on Blue Sky at Uncle Castlevania. I love that Stella always rolls her eyes.
Your usernames are dumb.
Yeah. And you could also subscribe to a place where I don't get a dumb screen name, which is our monthly newsletter at iwandyproductions.beehive.com, BEHIIV.com, for updates on things like what we've been listening to, playing, reading, screaming at the sky, trying to do with our lives to survive.
You can also email us at xtrexpod@gmail.com with questions or comments. You want fics where Kirk and the boys are alone in the wilderness? I have a lot of links for those.
And if you want more special behind-the-scenes action like our script notes, outtakes, extra podcasts, like unofficial channels, It's Coming Back, Hold On to Your Butts, and access to our Discord, our free Discord, then check out our Patreon at patreon.com/NYDProductions, where you can get all of that and more for at least $1.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and to tell your friends. We find that this nerdy shit is better when it's shared.
We'll see you next episode for The Rule Breaker. In the meantime,
believe boldly.
Seek truth.
Ship proudly.
X-Trex is created and written by Stella Cheeks, Erin Cline, and Bobby Hoffman, and produced by Bobby Hoffman for NYD Productions. Our show theme is Alien Spy by Ionix, and our show art was made by Jonathan Curtis. Vegan choreo meningitis. Vegan choreo meningitis. Vegan choreo meningitis. Thank you for your sickness. We can dine out.
I was like, I should learn how this is said, and then